This is it. The Colts are underdogs at home on Sunday against the Texans, but no worries. We're going to tell you how they can defend their home turf. Let's get to it.
You are Locked On Colts, your daily Indianapolis Colts podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right. Thanks for tuning in and making us your first listen of the day. This is your daily podcast covering your Indianapolis Colts, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today's show is brought to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnNFL and use code all lowercase LockedOnNFL to win $50 instantly when you play just $5. What is up, everybody? This is Jake Arthur and Zach Hicks of HorseshoeHuddle.com. I'm your resident credentialed media member, and Zach is the best dang film nerd in the biz. And today is our final opportunity to break down Colts Texans ahead of the game. Hopefully you caught Crossover Thursday with Cody Davis and I from Locked On Texans last night. Today, it's Zach and I spilling our final thoughts. We now know the injury report and all that good stuff. So we'll kind of take you through what the offense and defense both need to do to really capitalize on their advantages or counter their disadvantages against Houston. And then we'll kind of wrap up things and give you our final thoughts and our predictions on this one. But first, just to get the injury report out of the way, which really does tie into the offense, Josh Downs is the only player that's already been ruled out. He, of course, has been dealing with a high ankle sprain for a month now. He has recently gotten back on the field for rehab. He's been running routes and cutting. I saw him today on the side field, kind of running some sprints and running around a little bit. He doesn't seem to be limping, and he looks pretty good. So all fingers crossed, maybe he gets on the practice field next week. But for now, he has been ruled out. And then Matt Gay, I kind of thought today was going to be the complete opposite, Zach. I thought Shane Steichen was going to come in today and be like, Matt Gay, the guy who had surgery like a week or two ago, he's not going to play, and Josh Downs is questionable. Seems like strategically there was probably more to that. But Matt Gay is going to be questionable. You know, they say perhaps a game time decision. Shane didn't really commit to that one way or the other. I would be surprised if he plays. If he doesn't, it's going to be undrafted rookie Spencer Schrader that gets the nod. I don't know if the Colts just want to hold out all hope that their normal kicker is going to be out there. I don't know. Maybe they're just going to have to lean on taking more chances on fourth downs this week, Zach.
It's a kicker, man. Schrader could be the greatest kicker of all time. Yeah, like here's the thing, man. We don't know with kickers. This could be the greatest kicker of all time, or he could be an absolute bum who has no clue what he's doing. Like, it's a kicker. There's the range of possibilities is always crazy. But I do want to talk about the Josh Downs absence and how it relates to the Colts offense, because I think the biggest advantage the Colts have in this matchup is just the unknown. Like, who knows what the heck this offense is going to look like in this game. And not even in terms of efficiency and in terms of how players perform, but just what the formations look like, what, you know, the Colts are throwing out there at the Texans. We saw in glimpses last year when Anthony Richardson did play with the Colts, how they were, you know, a QB run heavy team at times. They mixed in a lot of pistol. They had some really unique and interesting sets. I mean, their goal line set where Richardson was essentially the only quarterback back there in the backfield. They had two guys as sniffer tight ends back there, and that really cool QB power RPO. Just stuff like that. Like, how prevalent are these, you know, kind of unique offensive sets with Anthony Richardson? And with Downs being out, it also is another thing when it comes to the unknown of AD Mitchell in the slot. You know, I think there's going to be some mistakes and some things that are not perfect, but how does it change from Josh Downs, where Downs was used a lot as like that orbit motion guy, the guy coming, you know, moving a lot pre-snap, doing some of the cheat motion type stuff and kind of doing that to keep the defense moving. With AD Mitchell, are you using him the same way? Are you orbit motioning him into the backfield like you did with Downs? Probably not, but you still want to have that element in your offense. So I think something that's really interesting with the Colts offense in this game is there's so much unknown, like how Richardson's going to perform, how this offense is going to look in general, what Mitchell looks like from the slot, because this is a guy who had 11% of his career snaps in college in the slot. Now he's the Colts starting slot receiver in his first NFL game. A lot of really cool interesting things to follow for the Colts on offense. Their offense needs to be clicking if you want to have a chance to win this. I think there's a good chance they could be clicking, but there's so much unknown when it comes to this Colts offense that it's really hard to predict what kind of output they're going to have.
Yeah, I'm not sure if Downs' absence like drastically changes overall what they would like to accomplish, or how they would like to attack. It definitely changes things like in clutch situations and like the pecking order of certain passing downs and everything. I do think if they had it their way, they obviously want to establish the run. And I do think AD Mitchell being out there certainly helps if they want to get like the play action downfield shots going. If that's part of what they would like to accomplish. Certainly Jonathan Taylor has a great track record against Houston on the ground throughout his entire career. Week 18 just had like 188 yards. So last time we saw him, he was tearing Houston up. And they know that, obviously. But with Anthony Richardson out there, I think that certainly helps counter when teams want to try and load up to stop specifically Taylor. But still, I think you're right when it comes to, errors or just learning experiences from AD Mitchell. I think that Cincinnati game was a great example. He did some nice things, but there was that one third down play where he came out of his break and saw something in coverage he wasn't expecting, and it caused him to kind of hiccup a little bit. We may see things like that. I'm just curious as to how they're going to use it as well. Just like you mentioned, this could be another big one for the tight ends. This could be a good Kylan Granson out of the slot game if they want to do that. You mentioned the orbit motions and things. I can't recall, other than Downs, I can't really recall anyone other than Anthony Gould really doing it during training camp. So when you see Gould out there, that's maybe when they try and, open up the defense from disguising what they're doing and get those motions going. But yeah, you certainly want to have Josh Downs out there for the things we've always kind of touted him for when you need that immediate quick win on third down or anything, just that short yardage stuff. You're certainly going to miss that. But I think their passing game could be more boom or bust as a result in this one. But I think the play action is going to be one of the biggest X factors in the passing game this week.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing to really look at with the Colts and how effective they're going to be on offense in this game is how good the RPO / inside zone run game is. Because what we saw in that Week 18 game last year is the Colts were just killing the Texans on inside zone, inside split zone, RPOs built off of that as well. Like they were throwing the RPO occasionally, but more so it was the window dressing with the RPO game that led to the linebackers not feeling very hard in the run game. And then obviously the Colts inside trio of Will Fries, Ryan Kelly, and Quentin Nelson just dominating the Texans defensive tackles who, I don't want to say they're bad players, but it certainly was not the top of the league by any means. And even though the Texans have new faces at defensive tackle this year, it's still kind of the same caliber of player that are in there. Solid players, don't get me wrong, but they're not like these, you're not going against DJ Reader or Grover Stewart type player on the inside. So if the Colts can get good drive up front on their inside zone, their split zone runs, which Shane Steichen's offense basically lives on inside zone and split zone, if they can get that good drive up front, get some good displacement there, and their RPO game can do enough with the window dressing where these linebackers are moving off their spot or not filling effectively, I think we're going to see another big Jonathan Taylor performance like we saw in Week 18. And if Richardson can just give a little bit more in the passing game than Minshew gave, which is not that hard for what Minshew gave in that Week 18 game, I think they can have a much more efficient overall day throwing the ball than what they did in that final game last year. So that'll be the key on offense, is how well they can run the ball, how well they can build the RPOs off of those inside zones and split zones. And then obviously, can Richardson get some of those big plays and hit those deep shots and mitigate the turnovers? Because when it comes to Richardson, I'm not too concerned about interceptions or anything, but fumbles, keeping two hands on the ball when he's rolling out of the pocket, what the QB run game looks like if he's keeping two hands on it then too. I think if you can mitigate those turnovers, you keep the run game going, give it to Taylor, lean on inside zone, split zone RPOs, I think you can have a really good, effective offense in this one, even with this new revamped Houston defense. But it's going to take those things and a pretty efficient day from Richardson to keep up with a really good Houston Texans offense.
Yeah, because of that, I'm kind of wondering if, similar to the Cincinnati game, again, I know it's preseason and you're holding your cards close to your chest, but we know Anthony loves those shots over the middle, those shots to the seam. It seems like, maybe they pull that coverage in a little closer, which leaves the middle of the field open. That kind of works into his advantage. It's certainly stuff he's comfortable with. So
yeah,
coming up next, guys, we're going to talk about the defense. Obviously, on paper, this is not a great matchup for the Colts, but there's things they can do to hang in there and maybe even best the Houston offense. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals who are actually right for the role. And that's why you got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. They have the tools to help find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just a job board either, because they actually help you hire professionals who you can't really find just everywhere else, even those who aren't actively searching for a new job, but who may be open to the right opportunity with your organization. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't even visit other leading job sites. So if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you are looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Plus, LinkedIn knows that small businesses are wearing so many hats nowadays that they just may not have the time or resources to actually do the hiring themselves. So they'll help you out. They're constantly finding new ways to make the process easier. They even just launched a feature that helps you write job descriptions, which is just monotonous. And again, it just takes one of those things that you put off of your plate. It makes the process even easier and quicker. And it's just one reason why 2.5 million small businesses use LinkedIn for hiring. So post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedonnfl. That's linkedin.com/lockedonnfl to post your job for free. Terms and conditions apply.
And guys, the new Locked On NFL is here. Locked On NFL is now 2 shows every day. First, the madman Tyler Rowland kicks off your morning with a double shot of NFL espresso, and then stop by the barbershop with Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight, hot opinions, detailed breakdowns, all in 30 minutes. It's a new NFL Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen at new Locked On NFL on YouTube, wherever you get your podcast. All right, Jake, we're back talking Indianapolis Colts, Houston Texans, week 1 this Sunday. The game we've been waiting for all offseason. I know we did multiple episodes in the offseason being like, what's the game you're looking forward to? What's the biggest game of the season? And I always said this week 1 game against the Houston Texans. Try to break the curse, get revenge for week 18. I think this game is massive for the Colts. And on offense, I think we're both pretty optimistic in the Colts offense. Like, I don't think it's going to be perfect by any means, but we're optimistic in the Richardson and Taylor combo. We're very, very much in on Shane Steichen and what they can do with that. And Steichen had pretty good success against this Houston defense and D'Amico Ryans last year. So we're pretty confident that they can at least muster up some points on offense. But when it comes to the Colts defense, it's a little bit of a different story. Historically, the Gus Bradley style of defense is very susceptible to the Shanahan tree of coaching, which Bobby Slowick comes from. A lot of in-breakers, a lot of routes that were designed to beat the Gus Bradley defense. And with Gus still kind of slowly transitioning his defense to the new era of football, the modern era of football, his defense still kind of gets shredded by these style of offenses. But I think the real big key for this game is the Colts defensive line. Because what we saw last year, I mean, look, for all we say about Gus Bradley's style of defense, the inexperience at corner, I mean, they were starting Darrell Baker Jr. in both of these games last year. With all the stuff that we say about the Colts defense, they allowed 21 points per game in 2 games against the Texans last year, 20 in the first matchup, and what was it, 23 in the second one, so like 21 and a half. Yeah. So they didn't really get bludgeoned on the scoreboard last year in this matchup against a really good young quarterback who was throwing to some really good wide receivers. So how did they do that? How were they able to do that? They took away the run game. Every time the Houston Texans ran the ball against the Colts in those 2 matchups, it was a massive win for the Colts. Yeah. And then they got after the passer. I mean, obviously in the second matchup, we wish they would have got after the quarterback a little bit better. But in the first matchup, that's why that game was a blowout going into the fourth quarter. And in the second matchup, it's the only reason it was close. So the key is forcing them into 3rd and longs with winning the run game, winning against the run game early. And then obviously unleashing your pass rushers there on 3rd down and making life difficult for CJ Stroud. Because I'll tell you what, right now, this game's not going to be won by the Colts secondary. It would be awesome if it was. Like, it would make us all feel really good. But it's going to come down to this Colts defensive line. If they can take away the run game and stop Joe Mixon in this new offense, and then get after CJ Stroud, they can make this a really good competitive game. But if the defensive line doesn't show up, then we might see fireworks from this Texans offense.
That's the whole thing for me. It's just about the pass rush. I mean, they've just got to get home. Doesn't necessarily have to be sacks. It doesn't have to be 7 sacks like it was in the first matchup last year. But to be able to consistently get Stroud out of his rhythm, don't let him step into everything, get him moving. I mean, I think Stroud's troublesome no matter how you look at it, because I think he works ad lib very well. But you've got to get pressure to say. You just have got to rattle him a little bit, and because otherwise you're trusting this pretty green secondary to stay in coverage forever. And we've seen even the best cornerbacks can't hang forever. Like, you have got to have that pressure up front. I'm pretty confident in them being able to stop the run. That'll be a big part of it. I am very curious, though. Something Cody and I talked about last night was, there's a lot of newness for Houston. And I think the Colts caught Houston at a very good time early last year where they were still figuring things out. Yeah. Like, they didn't really know how to operate the offense with Stroud in the beginning, and then they kind of settled in a little bit. They've got to try and work in Stephon Diggs. They've got to figure out, like, is our run game still going to be crap? We have Joe Mixon now. We got to try to do something with that. They've got new weapons there, so they've got to figure out how this works. Plus, Tank Dell's season ended last year with an ACL. They've got to work him back in there. So maybe the Colts catch them at a time where they're still trying to figure things out offensively. And then I think if the Colts if they just find themselves where they're supposed to be, like, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to be a bunch of playmakers, but eliminate the mental mistakes, the miscommunications and things like that. Those things will naturally come up through the course of a game, but uncharacteristically for the Colts, we saw it cost them points all the time last year. I mean, the 76-yard touchdown in week 18 was a great example. That stuff just can't happen. Like, just be where you're supposed to be, and more often than not, things will work out.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to sound like every high school coach when I say these things, like the keys to success in this one, because they're very self-explanatory, and they're ones that, like, they make a lot of sense. But, like, stay on top of the deep ball and just make your freaking tackles. Like, make your tackles. That's all that matters. Like, don't miss tackles, limit their yards after catch, and don't allow those 80-yard bombs over the top. Like, I mean, CJ Stroud was one of the best deep passers in football last year. He was so efficient and effective throwing the ball down the field. You got to stay on top of those routes. Even if you're sacrificing a 20-yard in-breaker as a result, that's fine. Get them into the red zone and stuff them in the red zone, force field goals. You can win this game by forcing field goals and not allowing touchdowns. But the second you're missing tackles, the second you're letting screenplays turn into 50-yard gains, the second you're allowing play action passes to be 70-yard touchdowns, that's when you lose the game. So stay over top of them, make your tackles, and win in the trenches, because we're going to talk about it in our final segment here. But the Colts' biggest advantage in this game on both sides of the ball is how big the discrepancy is overall on the trenches on both sides. It's how good the entire Colts offensive line is compared to the entire Texans defensive line, which it's a good defensive line the Texans have, 2 really good edge rushers, but the Colts have the advantage there, and especially on defense, the Colts defensive line versus the Texans offensive line, who Laramie Tunsil's a great player, but the rest of those guys, fine at best, decent. Like, you got to take advantage. Kwity Paye has to win against Titus Howard. You have to get wins on the inside with DeForest Buckner. You have to get wins at the other defensive tackle spot that's rushing, Dayo Adengbo, or Adetomiwa, if he's the one who's getting out there. Whoever it is, they have to get those wins up front and really showcase that, this trench advantage we have is what's going to win us this game. Because if they're not taking advantage of that discrepancy they have, they're not going to win this football game.
Yeah, I think Houston, like you mentioned, up front, they have one clear, strong link there in Laramie Tunsil as a pass blocker. Try and overwhelm him if you can. Latu and Buckner rushing side by side together, that seems to be a pretty enticing matchup. Get some stunts and stuff going with him. Make life difficult for Tunsil and make it so his task isn't so straightforward every play. Yeah. Like, just try and overwhelm their clear, strongest link. I think things should work out pretty well for like the Colts do have the clear advantage there, defensive line versus offensive line, but that just worries me because we've seen it not work out before. Like they haven't taken advantage of that. Now I think so early in the season, this is great for them. I think they'll do what they need to. But it is worrisome that it's a big red light shining on what they need to do, and it's just so obvious. It's like, well, will they do it? So
we're too pessimistic for this, Jake. I think that's what it is.
I've just been, it's like when you give someone advice and they don't take it, and then they go get hit by a car. I don't know.
I'll say this real quick because we got to get to our final segment. But when you are covering a team who has not won in Week 1 since 2013, and one of those losses in there was Urban Meyer's only head coaching win. When you were an 11-5 team that went to the playoffs, you lost to a one-win Jaguars team in Week 1. That's when you just know that you got to be a little pessimistic with Week 1. But I am fairly optimistic of what you guys will see in the final segment here too.
Yeah, and I'm going to go on a little bit of I'll go on a little thread of how long it's been since the Colts have won a Week 1 matchup. But yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Now, a word from our friends at PrizePicks. One Caleb Williams passing yard is all it takes to get you a win on PrizePicks every week in September. That's right, just 1 yard gets you an automatic win every football weekend in September. That's 4 free weeks of W's. Don't miss the deal on PrizePicks because it's gone when September ends. My home league just shifted to a super flex league, and I drafted Caleb Williams to be my QB2. So I might, I'm going to reap the rewards there, and maybe I'll go on PrizePicks and do this every week to guarantee me a win. You should too. You can now win up to 100 times your money on PrizePicks with as few as 4 correct picks. PrizePicks is the best way to get action on sports in most states, which includes California, Texas, and Georgia. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy so that your lineups stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. That means if your player leaves in the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks has got your back. Your picks are still live. Again, I think this is a really great matchup. If you're super confident in CJ Stroud, maybe you want to go look at his yardage mark and say he's going to go more than. If you say history is going to repeat itself and Jonathan Taylor is going to absolutely gash Houston, go more than. If you're worried about Anthony as a passer, but you think he's going to rush for a lot, go lower than on the passing yards. They've got a ton of different items you could choose from. So download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 instantly when you play 5. That's code LOCKEDONNFL on PrizePicks to get $50 instantly when you play 5. You don't even need to win to receive the $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. PrizePicks, run your game. All right, so I kind of feel like I want to sing that song like 5,025,600 minutes or whatever it is. Like that's how long it's been since the Colts won Week 1, and that's probably lowballing it because I don't know that song. I'll be honest with you guys. Okay,
Jake, I was a sophomore in high school the last time the Colts won a Week 1 game. I am a married man who has a house now. Like this,
I wasn't even married yet, dude. Like I swear to God, I've been with my wife forever. I had just bought this house. My wife and I weren't married yet, but for real, it was against Terrell Pryor. Not only was he in the NFL, he was still a quarterback playing for the Oakland Raiders. It's been a big fat minute since the Colts have won in Week 1. I don't know what it is. Like sometimes curses in sports are real. I think they could turn it around. Like, again, I like that they're getting Houston at this point of the year where they still have things they got to figure out. Even when you have like super teams and stuff, like in the NBA, for example, those teams take a minute to gel and figure things out and kind of come to their conclusion of how they need to play. And, I don't think Houston's going to get to the Super Bowl or anything, but I think they're a really, really good team, but I don't think they're going to click immediately. Like they have things to figure out. So for me, I'm very confident in the Colts' ability to run the ball in this one, which can help them control the clock. I don't know if the clock is going to super matter because CJ Stroud is a good downfield passer, even without Tank Dell, and now he's got Tank Dell back. So that's kind of scary. But the Colts do have clear advantages. Like you said, O-line, D-line, that's great. They should be able to harass Stroud. Again, I think they can run the ball with Anthony and Jonathan. However, it's going to take me a minute. The Colts, let's say their secondary does wind up playing well this year. I think it's going to take them a minute too. Like, I don't think it's just going to magically materialize right away in week 1 against the reigning rookie of the year. I do think it's going to be an entertaining, close game like these all have turned out to be. But one of the biggest problems for me is the kicking game. I do not like that Matt Gay is hurt and might play. I don't like the fact that a rookie undrafted kicker might be the kicker. I think there's going to be at least one missed kick in this one. And for that reason, I have Houston winning 30-27. I know you can feel me on that. You don't like me here. You don't like if they had prime Justin Tucker, you wouldn't be comfortable with that.
No, like, yeah, kicker. I'm not here to give kicker analysis, guys. You guys know. You guys saw my solo episode the other day where I was in pain.
I know that had to kill you.
I was in pain talking about kicker play. My overall thoughts on this matchup, though, and it's kind of just the overall vibe I've had about this game this week and the last couple of weeks. The Texans are the most bet team right now, and for the first game. You know, the most, I don't really know betting terms too well. I'm not big of a sports gambler, so you guys can correct me in the comments here. But like people, it's like 85% of bets are on the Texans at the odds that they're at, the -2.5. And that's why the odds have gone from -1 up to -2.5, because people are betting the Texans so heavily. And to me, I think I wouldn't care about that if this were like the Chiefs versus like the Panthers, because it's like the best team versus the worst team. But we are talking about a team that went 10-7 versus a team that went 9-8. I know last year it's hard to relate that to this year, but like this is not two drastically different teams. Even if you think the Texans got drastically better in the offseason, like Jake said, it doesn't materialize in week 1. So I think this is going to be a much closer game and what people expect. The Colts are going to come out with high energy because this is more of a revenge game for the Colts and everything. Like they're going to come out just flying all over the place because of that bitter taste of last year's loss. There's a lot of unknown with the Colts offense, and I think that plays in well with the Colts. Like, yes, it could go the other way and just be putrid, but I have enough faith in Shane Steichen and Anthony Richardson to get it done on that side of the ball. And overall, like, again, I'm not the biggest bettor, but you guys know when the markets are all saying one thing in betting, it typically goes the other way. And week 1 is the most like sporadic week of the season. Like I said a couple minutes ago, I mean, the 1-win Jaguars back in 2020 beat the Phillip Rivers Colts, which might have been the best team I've covered in Indianapolis, was the Phillip Rivers Colts. Like that was a really good football team the Colts had. So yeah, I have the Colts winning this one. I'll say 26-23. We'll say the reason it's 26 is 2 missed extra points or something, just so I can be with Jake on bad kickers. The reason why it's 23 for the Texans is a lot of missed kicks or whatever. Like, I don't know, a bunch of missed kicks just to have fun with it. But no, I'll say 26-23 now. I think the Colts are going to be able to run the ball. I think they're going to be able to lean on the RPO game. And I really think for how well this Texans team is built, I think they neglected the interior defensive line and neglected some of their offensive line. And no matter how good of a team you build at every other position, it's one in the trenches still, man. Like it really, like why were the Chiefs able to finally get around the corner and start winning Super Bowls more regularly after that Tampa Bay loss? Is because they invested in the offensive line. Their offensive line is the best in football now. They invested in the defensive line. Their defensive line is one of the best in football. And this is why they're beating teams now regularly and they're back-to-back champions. So I think the Colts having that advantage on O-line and D-line is a big deal as long as the Colts players actually play up to that. So maybe I'm a little optimistic. I'm going 26-23 Colts. If they lose this one, I'll probably pick them to lose every other game the rest of the year because my optimism had peaked in week 1. But I'm feeling pretty good, man. Like, I kind of like being the week 1 dog, you know? Like, I think the best time to face a good team, especially a good team that had to bring in a lot of pieces in the offseason, is week 1. Because like you said, there's a lot of things that just need to develop over the course of a season, and it's not going to be a finely tuned machine in week 1. So I think the Colts are getting them at the right time. They're going to come out so energetic for the revenge game. And I think the Colts are going to shock some people. I'm hoping, at least. I'm hoping they shock some people. But let's break this streak so we don't ever have to talk about it again.
That'll be good. But, I mean, yeah, this game is obviously incredibly important. It's only week 1. And, again, we got 17 weeks until the playoffs are determined, but it's a home game, which teams treat like gold. You have to win all those. It's a division game against a team we also suspect of being in the playoffs. So like this game, when you fast forward to week 18, like if one of these teams is still trying to get in, just like was the scenario last year, the outcome of this game is going to be important. So I don't want to say the Colts can't win. Like I would feel just as comfortable saying that they will win. But going into this, Houston, of course, they're the reigning division champs. I'm just a touch more comfortable with what they're doing. I will say I love that the dads are back in the secondary. Kenny Moore and Julian Blackmon in this one, I think, is huge. Blackmon being out last year was obviously a huge problem. So I love the fact that those guys are back there, keeping communication with everyone rolling. Like the secondary is healthier than it was last year. I definitely like that a lot more. That makes me a little more comfortable. But I also feel like when we bet we picked the Colts last year, it never went well. So
that's true.
You're welcome, Colts, for not picking you this week.
Like I said, they lose this week because I picked them, picking against them the rest of the year. That way, I'm hedging my bets.
Formula on this show every week.
Yeah. I'm trying to emotionally hedge. I'm going to go to PrizePicks. I'm going to put more than on everything Texans and less than on everything Colts. And that way I'll be happy regardless what happens. But don't worry, guys. We'll be back with you guys on Sunday after the Colts victorious game against the Houston Texans. Before we get out of here, though, I do want to remind you, our friends over at Locked On NFL are now 2 shows every day featuring Tyler Rowland in the morning and then Tony Wiggins for some real NFL talk afterwards. Add in the Locked On local experts, and you get unprecedented NFL insight all in 30 minutes. It's the new Locked On NFL, and it's twice a day. Make the madman Tyler Rowland and the barber Tony Wiggins your second listen on the new Locked On NFL on YouTube, where you listen to your podcast. And if you guys want to become a Locked On Colts insider and chat with us directly and get the inside scoop, follow the link in our show notes. And if you guys don't already, make sure you are following at Locked On Colts, at Jake Arthur NFL, and at Zach Hicks 2 all on Twitter. We're also on TikTok and Instagram. You can check us out over there, Locked On Colts, and also subscribe to us on YouTube, wherever you listen to your podcast. We love you guys' ratings, reviews, and we'll catch you guys back here post-game on Sunday.